Seeds of Wisdom RV and Economic Updates Wednesday afternoon, February 26, 25. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Good afternoon. Dinar recaps, Ukraine war. Trump is not trying to appease Putin. He has a vision of a new US-China-Russia order. There has been much and justified focus on the implications of a likely deal between US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin and the overwhelmingly negative consequences this will have for Ukraine and Europe. But if Trump and Putin make a deal, there is much more at stake than Ukraine's future borders and Europe's relationship with the US. As we are nearing the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine's future is more in doubt than it has ever been since February 2022. For once, analogies to Munich in 1938 are sadly appropriate. This is not because of a mistaken belief that Putin can be appeased, but rather because great powers, once again, make decisions on the fate of weaker states and without them in the room. Similar to the pressure that Czechoslovakia experienced from both Germany and its supposed allies France and Britain in 1938. Ukraine is now under pressure from Russia on the battlefield and the US both diplomatically and economically. Trump and his team are pushing hard for Ukraine to make territorial concessions to Russia and accept that some 20% of Ukrainian lands under Russia's illegal occupation are lost. In addition, Trump demands that Ukraine compensate the United States for past military support by handing over half of its mineral and rare earth resources. The American refusal to provide tangible security guarantees not only for Ukraine but also for allied NATO troops if they were deployed to Ukraine as part of a ceasefire or peace agreement smacks of the Munich analogy. Not only did France and Britain at the time push Czechoslovakia to cede the ethnic German-majority Sudetenland to Nazi Germany, they also did nothing when Poland and Hungary also seized parts of the country. And they failed to respond when Hitler, a mere 6 months after the Munich Agreement, broke up what was left of Czechoslovakia by creating a Slovak puppet state and occupying the remaining Czech lands. There is every indication that Putin is unlikely to stop in or with Ukraine. And it is worth remembering that the Second World War started 11 months after Neville Chamberlain thought he had secured peace in our time. The Munich analogy may not carry that far, however. Trump is not trying to appease Putin because he thinks, as Chamberlain and Daladier did in 1938, that he has weaker cards than Putin. What seems to drive Trump is a more simplistic view of the world in which great powers carve out spheres of influence in which they do not interfere. The problem for Ukraine and Europe in such a world order is that Ukraine is certainly not considered by anyone in Trump's team as part of an American zone of influence, and Europe is at best a peripheral part of it. Trump eye lens on the world. For Trump, this isn't really about Ukraine or Europe but about reordering the international system in a way that fits his 19th century view of the world in which the US lives in splendid isolation and virtually unchallenged in the Western Hemisphere. In this world view, Ukraine is the symbol of what was wrong with the old order. Echoing the isolationism of Henry Cabot, Trump's view is that the US has involved itself into too many different foreign adventures where none of its vital interests were at stake. Echoing Putin's talking points, the war against Ukraine no longer is an unjustified aggression but was, as Trump has now declared, Kyiv's fault. Ukraine has become the ultimate test that the liberal international order failed to pass. The war against Ukraine clearly is a symbol of the failure of the liberal international order, but hardly its sole cause. In the hands of Trump and Putin it has become the tool to deal it a final blow. But while the US and Russia, in their current political configurations, may have found it easy to bury the existing order, they will find it much harder to create a new one. The pushback from Ukraine and key European countries may seem inconsequential for now, but even without the US, the EU and NATO have strong institutional roots and deep pockets. For all the justified criticism of the mostly aspirational responses from Europe so far, the continent is built on politically and economically far stronger foundations than Russia, and the overwhelming majority of its people have no desire to emulate the living conditions in Putin's want-to-be empire. Nor will Trump and Putin be able to rule the world without China. A deal between them may be Trump's idea of driving a wedge between Moscow and Beijing. But this is unlikely to work given Russia's dependence on China and China's rivalry with the US. If Trump makes a deal with Xi as well, for example over Chinese territorial claims in the South China Sea, let alone over Taiwan. All he would achieve is further retrenchment of the US to the Western Hemisphere. This would leave Putin and Xi to pursue their own existing deal of a no-limits partnership unimpeded by an American-led counterweight. From the perspective of what remains of the liberal international order and its proponents, a Putin-Xi deal, too, has an eerie parallel in history: the short-lived Hitler-Stalin Pact of 1939. Only this time, there is little to suggest that the Putin-Xi alliance will break down as quickly. BRICS. Goldman Sachs predicts US dollar will experience a boom. The BRICS alliance might not be able to deter the US dollar, as Goldman Sachs predicts the currency could experience a tariff-fueled boom. Currency traders could make stellar profits if they take long positions on the USD, wrote the Global Investment Bank. Tariffs from the Trump administration could bolster the appeal for the greenback, leading to further gains, the note from the bank read. If the US dollar continues its rise in the charts, BRICS will have a hard time safeguarding their respective local currencies. The development could derail the de-dollarization agenda and lead to the greenback strengthening further. The USD faced severe challenges from BRICS, who were looking to dethrone it from the world's reserve currency status. BRICS. Tariffs could fuel US dollar boom, says Goldman Sachs. The escalating trade wars could benefit the US dollar in the long haul, wrote Goldman Sachs in a note, and the development could impair the BRICS bloc. Ultimately, not all tariffs are equal when it comes to FX, wrote Goldman Sachs strategists Karen Reichert-Fishman and Lexi Conter in a note. But given the unwind of premium in key crosses in recent weeks, we once again think tariff risks look underpriced, making long dollar exposure now look even more attractive. Trump's protective style of governance could drive inflation but in turn, support US yields, the note read. The tariffs are ruffling a lot of feathers in the markets as they directly affect the imports and exports sector. BRICS was looking to outdo the US dollar but found itself in a stiff economic situation. The local currencies of BRICS countries have already plummeted to new lows against the US dollar this year. The de-dollarization initiative could stagnate for the next 4 years as threats of tariffs loom from Trump. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: dinarrecaps.com